What's up, world? This is Wild Would Live Loud coming at you guys again with another episode of Say It Loud. Again, this journey has been so awesome to really be able to connect with game changers, for people who are creating a difference from their communities, to making a huge impact, to going and tapping into people working one-on-one. It's been such a blessing and honor to be able to be part of that journey, to work with people or to hear people's story and mission and their teachings. And that leads me to my next guest, Amelia. Amelia is a person that I just recently I've been connected to, and she works with exactly that. So Amelia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. And before I even say anything about what I do, I just really want to thank you for having this platform. I think that it will really impact others in a way that we can't measure, beyond views, beyond likes. So I'm just really grateful that you have this. And I'm also really grateful that you think I'm cool enough to be a guest on it. But yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Amelia, and I'm a self-love coach and healer. And I founded a company called SelfLoveStory, where the mission is to be able to teach as many people as possible true, deep, courageous self-love. And what I mean by courageous self-love is, self-love is not just like having a t-shirt that says I love myself, or like going to the spa. Courageous self-love is having that heart, that courage, that desire to go deep and really transform your life at a cellular level so that you can create something extraordinary. And from that place, also inspire others to create something extraordinary. And the way that I do that is I mostly work with professional singles. Oftentimes they're single. I do work with couples, but they're all people who do great things and know that they're great on some level, but they've touched certain edges around that belief and that self-love. And they're really desiring to up-level their mindset in career and money, to deepen and learn more about their spirituality, and to really strengthen their intimacy, their personal and romantic relationships. So that's and I call all of that just like mastering a self-love lifestyle.
I love that. I think that's really great. There's something that you're saying that really stands out to me with that, is that self-love is not this occasional action of, okay, I'm going to self-care once this week and treat myself once this week, but make it a come from in everything that we do, and how we live and how we make our decisions, and to really be conscious about serving ourselves as we're in our mission to do whatever it is, operating how we get to operate in reality. That's really interesting, because even me, like I think about my self-love and it's like, yeah, I'll schedule that in on Tuesday between 5 and 6 p.m. but it's the actual practice of it.
Yeah, and that's why I call it a lifestyle, a self-love lifestyle, and a self-love mastery. And mastery and lifestyle has no beginning and end. It's a way that you live. It's the way that you treat yourself. And I think it's easy for people to think about that, because like in a relationship, or like when you're married, or even when you have kids or family, there's no like, okay, you're my mom today, and then tomorrow, or you're my husband today, and then tomorrow. It's like, no, like this is my life. And so I like to say, like, loving yourself, that's your life. That's a lifestyle. And it's something that can be mastered. And mastery doesn't mean you ever get there. You can always get better.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's this journey aspect of it. There's so many people that I find in any type of journey of consciousness that they're looking to arrive to the destination of being woke, being there, but it is a journey, and we go through times where that elevates, and we learn and we grow and we implement, and things are flowing, and then things start crashing, and then I have to redefine. And I'm never free of my flaws. I could work on them, I could grow on them, but there's always some level of me that shows up, and it's not about living or being perfect beings. It's about learning how to be in that dance of that give and take, in that process. I really love that come from. There was this Buddhist teacher that I was doing some work with, and she was saying that if only we could teach on how to give and receive love, imagine the things that we could do. Because in that, we could still have space for science, we could still have space for technology, implementation, development, growth, economy. But if we learned how to really be mindful and to give and to learn also how to receive and have that synchrony, there's so many problems that are even present today that we've been going through that wouldn't have to happen, and it's a shame. There's this whole thing about self-love. It's so powerful because it's not just individualistic of that something that contributes to you, but something that radiates out in what occurs in the world.
100 million%. And that is why, that's the conclusion that I came to of like, this is my mission, this is my purpose. Because I think people hear self-love and you think, oh, it's selfish. And I'm like, no, it's not selfish, it's self-full. Because when we learn how to give to ourselves and how to love ourselves and fill ourselves up, we have more overflow from which to give, and like I said, a lot of my clients, a lot of the people that I work with, like they're badasses, like they're making stuff happen. And still there's deeper we can go in loving ourselves and in making that self-care a priority so that we have more to give. And the other piece too that I notice is a lot of times people that are badasses and movers and shakers and making things happen, self-care and self-love often falls to the bottom of that priority list. And I even say, social justice warriors and caretakers and mothers and givers, like we need self-love too. And I love that teaching of teaching how to give and receive, because if I were to distill the work that I do with my clients into one line, I would say I teach them how to give and receive love.
That's solid, and to be able to embody that give and take. I myself get caught up in this world where I'm so focused on, I think I've mentioned it to you before, I get so focused on the progression of my life, the evolution, the implementation, the creating aspect of it, that completely neglect or often neglect the preservation side of it, where I get to take care and nurture that side. Like I was just sharing before we started recording, I get so busy with okay, cool, let's move the needle, let's get things done. And then when I'm moving at kind of a sluggish pace, I want to punish myself, for the lack of a better word. I'm hard on myself with that. And in those times, there might be that need to practice being kind to myself and practice giving myself love. And if that was a familiar muscle, which this is why I really love what you're doing with your clients, if that was a familiar muscle, that journey would be a lot easier to overcome.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you use the word muscle, because I use that word a lot too with my clients. There is no self-love class in school. There is no self-love university. And because there was none, I'm like, well, I'll be the self-love university. I'm going to be the self-love class. And it's funny because a lot of, with my business, we have marketing and branding and all that stuff. And so many coaches and teachers were like, Amelia, who really wants self-love? Who's really buying that? You have to sell a certain result. And I'm just like, I stuck with it because I'm like, no, just because it's not the norm right now. And this was years ago when I started my business, it will be. And it's so funny because now it is people are finding my work because they're looking for what is self-love, and I'm just like, exactly. And really that's the core of it. And if we all have that muscle, and I use that with my clients all the time, because the things that I teach them on how to self-love, they're like, oh, well, I already know this, so why am I still bad at this? And I'm like, you're not being very nice to yourself. This is a new muscle. And especially in our culture and in our society, it's in America, the United States, where we're from, but also a lot of Western cultures and societies, there is an obsession with more, do more, progress more, produce more. And if I'm not producing, then I'm not worthy. But if we look at nature and if we look at just the natural cycle of things, all things need rest, but we're conditioned to think that rest is bad, that I am only worth as much as I produce. And it's such a disservice to who we are as just beautiful, wonderful, gorgeous beings of the planet. We're so much more than what we produce.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I think I went almost maybe even more than a decade with, on average, 19 and 20 hour days where I'm sleeping for 4.5 hours because I'm even like going to school and I'm pushing my business and I'm managing this thing and having this pull where, you know, I can't even knock to say that it doesn't work, because I've created so much in forceful growth. You know, I created so much in embodying the masculine and to be like action, reaction, cause and effect, let's go in this push. But it's not sustainable. You know, it's not sustainable in that way until I could start embodying the feminine and to be in that synchrony, that balance, you know, that harmony into it, that grace that comes into it, where it doesn't have to lower the level of intensity that I'm really going and applying to what I'm creating, but the process of how I interact with myself in that now becomes part of the picture of success, and not something isolated or not something that happens after hours.
Yeah. Exactly. I love, and it absolutely is a balance. It's a harmony. It's all the energies working together and they all have their place. Yeah. I love it.
So question, when did this all happen? When did you start working with self-love? When did you feel, what was your journey or your experiences that led you to the point of, one, embodying this, and second, teaching it?
When I think about the trajectory that got me here and I look at my life, there's been a theme of betrayal. One of the biggest betrayals was I was in an abusive relationship in college from ages 19 to 21. And, you know, for anyone that's been in an abusive relationship, you know, outside looking in, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, why don't you just leave if he's bad to you? And that's not how it works. That's not how it works. It's a slow decay and erosion of self-esteem and trust in self that happens over time. And I'll tell the end of the story and I'll kind of like reverse engineer it a little bit. So at the end of it, when I finally was able to get away and get out of that relationship, I remember when I was able to get away and I was alone in my room, I was able to touch like these depths of my soul. Like I was able to touch like the depth of my pain and my sorrow and my grief. And what I realized was, it was weird. It was like this question came up from deep down there of like this deep self-loathing, right? So the opposite of self-love, just like blaming myself. How did I get into this situation? I'm smart. I know better. How did I allow someone to treat me so badly for so long? So like I'm in my room just kind of swirling with these thoughts. And this question came up and was like, what would a person have to believe about themselves? Or what kind of person, who was I being that I chose this relationship, right? So blaming him as like he did a lot of bad things, but putting that aside, taking that self-responsibility and looking at myself and like, who was I being and what did I believe about myself that had me choose this relationship over and over again and stay with it for like over 2 years. And that was the piece where like the self-loathing came up. So it was like self-loathing. Okay, well, what's the antidote to self-loathing? Well, it's self-love. And a few years later, I read this book by Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote The 4 Agreements, but he also has an amazing book called Mastery of Love. And there is this line in that book that just slayed my soul. And I immediately thought about this relationship. And he says, I'm going to botch up the line. I'm going to paraphrase it, but he says something like, we tolerate abuse from other people that is less than the abuse that we give ourselves. So if we are interacting with someone and they treat us worse than we treat ourselves, we won't even tolerate it. Like it's not like we wouldn't even. They probably wouldn't even be in our vibrational field. Like we would just be like, But if someone abuses you even a little bit less than you abuse yourself, you will tolerate it endlessly.
Wow.
Yeah. A mic drop moment. And I read that book before SelfLoveStory was born. But you know, starting from like when I broke up with him and I finally was able to leave him and having those questions come up of like, how self-loathing was I? What was the level of belief that I had in what I deserved? how low was it that I was tolerating this? And then years later, reading that line in that book, it was like, it was one of those moments, where you're reading a book and you just have to put it down and like take a breath.
Yeah.
And what I just want to speak a little bit about what that was like to be in that relationship. I think it's important for those who have been through it, because I think it's empowering just to hear someone speak powerfully about it and honestly about it. And two, for those who aren't in it, to just really understand like how this works, right? And I think there's so many things that can be to blame. I think culture, society programs us to only look for this like fantasy.
Yeah.
Fantasy of love that doesn't exist. I mean, Hollywood perpetuates it, TV, movies perpetuate it, and I just think society perpetuates it. And that's often how abusers can get in, because they project that fantasy. They give you that fantasy. And so he said and did all the right things and was so charming and was so into me and so appreciative of all of my strengths and my beauty and my radiance. And what 19-year-old girl doesn't want to be appreciated for her beauty and her radiance and her strengths and her intelligence? So, and even the places where I was insecure, like about my body or just about how I looked, like he just said the opposite. And so I was totally here for that. And who wouldn't be, right? And it happens little by little over time. So I remember like the first time he called me a bitch. And so he was like messaging me and he was all like, where the hell were you? This and this and that. And at the time I was still strong and in my strength. So I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, I got a life. And he was like, you're such a bitch, or something like that. He called me a bitch. And I was like, first of all, no one talks to me like that. So I signed off. And the next day, it was funny. I had my, I had my hat on and I walked into school and I was like, nobody talks to me that way. You don't get to talk to me that way. Like, we are done. And so like, I'm about to walk away. And this is the part where I don't think people realize that this happens. He broke down crying and like got on his knees begging me for forgiveness. I was not prepared for. I was prepared for him to be like, well, F you too, whatever, and for me to just walk off and tell my girlfriends and go about my life. Yeah. But he just broke down crying and he was like, you mean so much to me. Like, what am I supposed to do without you? I was not prepared for that. I just was shocked. My jaw hit the floor. And I just wanted to like make him like help him feel better in that moment. And then of course there's like the weeks of the apologies and now everything's good again and all of that. And it's a cycle. And then it gets worse and worse and worse over time until fast forward, he's isolated me from all my friends. He isolated me from my family. I didn't feel like I could tell anyone about it because I was so ashamed that I was so stupid that I ended up in this situation. I didn't feel like anyone would understand. Also, he was very scary and intimidating, and we went to school together. So if I tried to stay away from him, he would follow me to my class. He would wait for me outside class. He would, if I blocked him on instant messenger, he would make new screen names and instant message me all the time. He would email me. He would call my phone, blow up my phone. It was just like a constant just barrage of just this energy. And at that point I would get so desperate that I would just want it to stop and I would just like go back, and I just couldn't get away and get out of it. And it just got worse and worse and worse, and it starts off by being called a bitch, but then it's like verbal of he would berate me and he would call me selfish and call me all these names. And I don't know, somehow I think these abusers are also just really good at just knowing where to get in and where to touch on, because he would touch on things that I was already insecure about and like break it down even more until it became physical. And then it gets worse and worse and worse. And I just want it to go away. I just want it to go away until I don't know, until we get help. And so, I mean, how did I get out of it? I graduated. So I was, I started school a little early because, I'm Filipino. My mom's a tiger mom. So of course, every Asian mom's thrill in life is to like have their children do better than everyone else. So I was forced, lovingly encouraged to skip a grade. And so I graduated before he did. And I also graduated early. So I graduated, and that was how I got away, because he would just follow me everywhere in school. And so then again, back to how I started reverse engineering this story. I graduated early, so I actually had 6 months before I started my big girl job on Wall Street. And so those 6 months, I just like cocooned. And I remember when I took my last final, I would just sit in my room like what the hell did I just go through? And I didn't talk to anyone about it, which is really sad. And that's where, that question came up of like, how did I get here? Like, how did this like sassy, smart, go-getter girl end up in this situation and tolerated someone who just treated her so badly? Yeah. And I will say too, the other thing other than that question, dance saved my life. One of my friends who had known me from like high school was starting a dance team, and he had messaged me and he was like, hey, I don't know where you're at in life right now, but I'm starting a dance team. And this was at the time in New York City when the MTA was on strike, because I was like, girl, I'm not getting on a subway. But he was like, nope. He's like, I already have a ride for you. We're picking you up at 8. On some spiritual level, maybe he knew I needed what is that called? A lifesaver. He knew I needed that, because he had no idea what was going on in my life. But he was like, we're gonna pick you up and we're gonna go. And I just, so what I would say with that is anyone going through anything hard, whether you relate to like this specific situation, it's like, find something you love that is you, right? So dance is me. Like I say, I learned how to dance before I learned how to walk. Like it's me. And I was able to just throw myself into it, and not as a distraction. I wasn't denying what I had been through, but it was something that was able to, like, that fire that was inside of me was able to just grow and grow and grow because of my love for dance. And that's how I really got out of it. And I know, I've been to hell, lived to tell about it. And now I teach people how to get through hell through self-love. So that's how we got here.
Wow. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that story. I mean, there's so many people I would imagine be able to relate to that and being there. There's a number of things that pop up into my mind as you're sharing this stuff. I remember this one conversation that I was having with someone that is I believe is writing a book about the abuser. And the abuser wasn't this intentionally walking in, I'm going to go and destroy this person, but a person that has their own internal battles, not excusing it at all or anything like that, but they have their own demons and their own battles. And at first, for a longing to be loved and to be relieved of that pain and doing all that stuff, they lash themselves on and glorify a person or something to really go and as an opportunity for them to be someone other than who they are. And then in that comfort of defining that relationship, of finding comfort within your partner, they were sharing that person then becomes in the mindset of, okay, well, now my demons are also yours. So we're going to be real with each other. We're going to be real with each other. And their ugly starts to come out, and their ugly spills out a little too much. And then they have to apologize and get it back. And then their ugly spills out again, and they apologize and get it back. And what happens is that it becomes a conditioning that this is acceptable, or this is allowed, or this is just how we go. You don't understand our bad, but you also don't understand our good. So we could start excusing all this stuff. And another one, the mic drop, as soon as you said that we allow people to treat us a certain way as long as it's not as bad as we treat ourselves or that we hold ourselves, I just had a flashback of a bunch of situations or people that I've been involved with, and I'm like, holy crap, man. Like I stepped out of that, and I'd be like, how the hell did I tolerate being there? Why? Not to say that they were abusive in any type of way, but their demons and their hardship, their darkness that they were unwilling to look at or to confront, I excused because that's how I held myself, that I didn't hold myself to that higher caliber of what I get to have, who I get to be, what we get to cultivate. And yeah, man, that's really crucial, especially for the people who are in those relationships right now. There's a way out. and it doesn't have to be accepted. Now, I understand there's a lot of empathy, there's a lot of connection. Well, he or she has been through a lot, but taking responsibility, I really love that you took responsibility. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that he's not responsible for his part. That doesn't excuse what he might have done, but you were able to understanding how that and identifying and concluding that that could be bad, still had the willpower to identify how am I responsible for being here and make a choice from there. I think that that's so important. That's such a harsh thing to do in reality, in society, taking responsibility for the byproduct of what's occurring.
Well, I said this the other day. I think it's easy to point out the villain without because it's harder to face the villain within. It's interesting because the work that I do, I say these things, and depending on what context it's in, people will still misinterpret and still think that I'm saying I'm condoning abuse, which is like, no, I'm not. However, this was my life. This was my situation. On some level, I had to look at who was I being and what was I coming from that I chose this situation, because not everyone chooses these situations because that is the big story. I mean, there's so many other things that led me to like self-love work, but that's the big one. Cause like the fact that I was choosing someone, because he was really just a physical manifestation of the ways that I was treating myself. Like if we're being honest here, which I am being honest. And yeah, even to say that, I'm like, ooh, but it was like, cause the names that he was calling me, the things that he was saying, I was already thinking those things about myself. And it's also why when we're being abused, like we're staying, because it's touching on things, and it's also gaslighting us to think like, oh, maybe I am this, right? Because that self-love muscle, like you said, that fortitude, that trust in self hasn't been strengthened enough to be like, actually, no, I'm pretty amazing, or no, I'm not this, or no, I won't tolerate this. Self-love is ultimately about self-responsibility without condoning shitty behavior. But like at the end of the day, like this is our life. We're creating our life. So we need to look at it on some level.
Yeah. And that's such a hard thing that I feel that there's a lot of backlash in saying that, right? And a lot of backlash being like, take responsibility. It's like, I'm not responsible. That wasn't called for. Yes, it wasn't called for. It is never okay. It is never appropriate. That being said, yes, taking responsibility and acknowledging not necessarily on what occurred in that situation, but what I allow in my life. How I live my life, how I choose. And if we really want to do that work, for those people that, again, I sympathize for those people who have been in these situations, and I know people who've been in these situations, taking a look at our reality and how we want to live. Despite what occurs in our circumstances around us, we need to take responsibility with how we show up, how we interact with those situations, and what we allow into our lives, because then those become our reality. Those becomes our choices. And our choices become instill those beliefs, and those beliefs become our lifestyle and our values, and we define ourselves by them. So it's this whole spiral that we could get lost in. And I applaud you that you've been through that situation, that it's been your own journey of healing, where it's not just jaded and saying F men or whatever, even if it might have been for a moment or not, but like, and now you're out in the world teaching it and sharing it with those people who
Yeah, and that's why I call it courageous self-love, because it does require courage to face those things. Because it is easy to just be like F men and like whatever. And I might have had some of those moments, but it requires that willingness to look at that. And that's why, when people are interested in my work or they ask to work with me, I always say, I'm like, look, are you willing to go deep, and are you willing to face certain things? Because if you really want at least my brand of self-love mastery and self-love lifestyle that I'm teaching, it requires that level of responsibility and that level of being willing to look at it and that strength. But it's so good. It's so much better on the other side of that, so it's so worth it.
So how is it that you work with people now? Because I know you're traveling and you're around the world right now. So how is it that you continue to work with people now in these days?
My business has been 90% virtual. So I actually have clients from all over the world. So I work with people privately and one-on-one, coaching sessions, and I also work with group coaching programs. And whenever we can, self-love retreats, in-person self-love retreats to really take it deeper. So that's how I work with people. I'm actually planning on launching some digital courses at some point in the future. I'm revamping my website. I give a lot of content, because I'm so passionate about all of these topics. So I have a weekly podcast called Courageous Self-Love. And there's 22 episodes of season 1 on there, and there's tons of videos and blogs on my website. But when people are ready and when they want to go deeper, then they can work one-on-one with me. And I like to say my biggest gift is I wield the knife of clarity, and I cut through all your bullshit. And so when people are ready for that, then they usually step up and they're like, dude, I want to work with you. How do I do this? I work with women and men. I work with professional singles and couples.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's also really important. I love that it's a mixture of both, because for men is we don't hear about this promotion or being able to speak about our vulnerability, our connection, our empathy, our compassion. Even myself growing up in sports or growing up in different activities where we're taught to man up, toughen up, shut down, just don't show your emotions, boys don't cry, whatever crap that people tell you that's not true. We start to desensitize. And if we could actually learn, however cheesy you might think this sounds, if you could learn how to self-love in what you do, and how to be the fire of masculine, but embodying that healing, that kindness with ourselves, man, we could really start to be conscious on how we treat other people, especially in relationships, how we show up with our partners. It is so important to really practice that, and learning how to activate it, practice it, master it, give it, all this work that comes in that process. So I really, really love that. And hey, I look forward to doing a Live Loud production of your self-love retreats one day.
Oh my gosh. We're thinking the same thing. I've already thought about that. You think I haven't already thought about that? I have.
Awesome. So right now that people might be home, unfortunately, the reality that they might be stuck in abusive relationships and stuck at home right now, or finding their way out of those relationships and finding healing, or have been in the situation in the past and they never fully really healed, but they're walking away jaded, or whatever it is that might be. What would be your words right now? What would you say to people that could start practicing this work of self-love, whether you're in a relationship or not?
Absolutely. And I just want to also drop a resource that is really wonderful. It's thehotline.org, thehotline.org. So for those of you that are stuck at home in a bad situation, that's a really good resource. There's a lot of stuff on there that can help you. And also just Googling. So if you really are in a bad situation, just start to look online for things that can help you. But what I will say is don't give up that thing that lights you up. Like I said, dance. I tell people, why do you love dance? I mean, other than the fact that it's obvious that I just love it, but it lights me up. It brings me so much joy. And so whether it's drawing or painting and that thing, and just hold on to that, because that is what will, if you're still alive, that fire is not out. There's a little ember or a little burning coal or something, and doing the things that you love that really bring you joy will help fuel that fire. And as that fire gets bigger, you will attract and find the answers and the resources that you need to help take you further. So whether you feel really stuck in your situation or you're out of it, but you're still kind of jaded, find that thing that you love and do it now.
Yeah. There's this quote that I really love. It says, don't ask what this world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, because what this world needs is for people to come alive. If we can access that and practice that and be that, one, we open up energetically on another level to start attracting things from the universe and the people and what we entertain our energy on, right? We could all look back in the past where we could have been stuck in some unhealthy patterns, and pay attention to what you entertain, what you allowed into your space, what you allowed into energy. When you start exercising the things that you love, in that practice, I believe that we could start uncovering certain things. And in that discovery, we could then have something that we could share and give. Amelia, thank you so much for sharing your story and being so real with us. Like I really, really appreciate that. It's not heard of enough. And this goes out to all the people, in particular the women who have been silenced or are silenced right now from this thing. Independent, if you've been through it there or not, self-love. If we could learn how to give and receive love, that's maybe all it would ever take. So please get in touch with her. If you could drop some handles where people can find your work and follow your stuff, get in touch with you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is SelfLoveStory.com, and I'm the Amelia Fortes on Instagram and on YouTube. Facebook is SelfLoveStory as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll plug those things in here. Again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. And again, thank you for having this platform.
Absolutely. I appreciate it so much. And I'm really thankful for your words and your guidance and to learn from you, to learn how do I practice myself, love myself. I think is really solid. And it's a message that the world gets to hear. So for everyone, again, tuning in to this is another episode of Say It Loud, where we get to hear from more extraordinary people doing such incredible things, to just share and celebrate amazing people all around the world doing some magnificent, magical things for their community, for their people, and finding out the story of what got them there and just hearing about all that fun stuff. So stay tuned and we will be back with much more fun. Peace.